Before Europe knew soybeans, a seed imported from the distant east that later became a massive industrial protein source, and before protein was turned into mass-produced factory products, Europe already had its own legume. That legume fed the poorest people, restored barren soils, and existed for thousands of years. It grew on the dry Mediterranean fields where the soil was nutrient poor, where ancient Roman farmers once sowed seeds directly without plowing. It was cheap food, valuable green manure that enriched the soil, even fake money and plays. Pale yellow seeds as large as coins used to stage scenes of wealth. For centuries it was present across Greece, Italy, Iberia, ancient Egypt, and spread through the Roman Empire as an indispensable part of rural life. It did not need their fertilizer. It did not need their seeds. It fixed its own nitrogen. It regrew on its own. It sustained families across generations. A path to generate revenue. A path to create independence. Yet today in most of modern Europe, it has almost disappeared from the daily table. Almost no one mentions it anymore. If it was once so important, a native sustainable protein source independent of imports, then why does almost no one eat it anymore? That is the story of Lupinus albus, the ancient lupin bean, also known as white lupin. Not an exotic plant from the Americas or Asia, but a Mediterranean native that accompanied European civilization from ancient Greece through Rome, the Middle Ages, until it was pushed to the margins of the modern world. A plant that was not discovered by modern scientists, did not require reports from the National Academy of Sciences, but was clearly recorded in the oldest agricultural books of Europe, praised by Roman authors as a miracle for barren land. From ancient Rome around the 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE, Lupinus albus was widely cultivated across the core regions of the empire, Italy, Greece, where its original name termis, meaning hot, referred to its characteristic bitter taste, in Iberia, present-day Spain and Portugal. Roman agronomists such as Pliny the Elder in Naturalis Historia. Book 18 devoted an entire section to describing lupin. It is the only plant that requires no plowing, prefers rocky dry soil, even sand. It needs no care, no fertilizer. It is itself the best fertilizer. It enriches grain fields and vineyards, feeds cattle, and makes them strong. Pliny also emphasized that lupin was used as food for both humans and livestock after soaking in hot water to reduce bitterness. Columella, in his well-known agricultural treatise, placed lupin above all other legumes. Marcus Terentius Varro also recommended lupin as green manure, plowed into poor soil before the plant set pods, or even with both the stems and pods. For farmers in the lower classes, lupin was a stable source of protein, supplementing a diet mainly based on wheat and bread. During the Middle Ages, around the 5th to the 15th century, lupin did not disappear. It remained firmly present in rural European life, especially in the Mediterranean region. It was found on smallholder farms where soils were nutrient poor, in Benedictine monasteries and other religious orders where monastery gardens were used for self-sufficiency. Monasteries often cultivated lupin as part of crop rotation systems combined with vegetables and medicinal herbs, similar to how they maintained the herbarius and hortus. Ancient agricultural texts, such as copies derived from the Geoponica or monastic manuscripts, continued to mention lupin as a green manure crop and as food. Lupin, it was once a familiar protein of Europe, a native legume praised by the greatest agronomists of antiquity, sustaining millions of poor people for thousands of years. It did not need modern scientific reports to prove its value. It was clearly documented in history. Let me show you what you are paying for every day while ancient lupin gives it for free. First is fertilizer. The air we breathe contains about 78% nitrogen. The problem is that form of nitrogen is very stable, and crops cannot absorb it directly. For plants to use it, nitrogen must be broken and converted into ammonium or nitrate. Modern gardeners or farmers spend millions of dong each year on chemical nitrogen fertilizers. Lupin does not. It produces its own nitrogen. In lupin roots, live bacteria from the Rhizobium/Bretta rhizobium group. They enter the roots and form small structures called root nodules. Inside these nodules, the bacteria take nitrogen from the air. In the soil, use enzymes convert part of the nitrogen into ammonia and leave the rest in the soil through decomposing roots or as green manure enriching the next crop. Second is protein, what we are buying at high cost through meat protein supplements, imported soybeans, supplement powders, or even industrial protein bars. Dry lupin seeds contain 35 to 44% protein. By comparison, soybeans contain 36%. Chicken meat contains 31%. And here is what few people mention: lupin protein is rich in lysine, an essential amino acid that many cereals lack. Combine lupin with wheat and you have a nearly complete protein system without a laboratory, without a brand. In terms of nutrition, lupin does not fall behind any modern legume. In fact, it surpasses them in many aspects: low starch, very low glycemic index, often 11 to 15, according to sources such as glycemic index databases, and studies lower than soy at about 14 to 16, and chickpea at about 28 to 36, suitable for people with diabetes, weight control, or modern European diets that aim to reduce carbohydrates while maintaining satiety. Extremely high fiber, up to 30 to 40% in dry seeds, 2 to 3 times higher than chickpea or soybean, including both insoluble and soluble fiber, promoting prolonged satiety, supporting digestion, lowering cholesterol, stabilizing blood glucose, and nourishing the gut microbiota. Low fat, mainly monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, such as oleic and linoleic acid, beneficial for cardiovascular health, reducing inflammation, containing no cholesterol. Third is dependence on supply chains. Every time you buy refined wheat flour, packaged soybeans, or hybrid seeds, you depend on someone's season, someone's supply, someone's profit. Lupin is different. It regenerates itself. Ancient farmers only needed to save seeds from the previous harvest and sow them again the following year, without having to purchase new ones. It is an annual plant, but it readily self-seeds and spreads on poor soils. You plant it once it continues to provide. No seed company intermediary required. But the biggest problem of Lupinus albus is that it is very bitter. That bitterness comes from natural alkaloids. It can be toxic if eaten raw, so you cannot consume it directly. To eat lupin, you have to work for it. Soak the seeds in water, rinse them many times. Change the water continuously. Boil or roast further to reduce the remaining bitterness. Sometimes it takes several days just to prepare one batch of seeds. This entire process requires time and effort, something that poor farmers in the past could still manage because they had time and no alternative choices. But when society entered the industrial era, when everything had to be fast, cheap, and convenient, lupin became edible but labor-intensive. It did not fit the urban lifestyle food processing factories or supermarkets where everything must be ready to eat or cook within 10 minutes. Then came the industrialization of food and agriculture in the 19th to 20th centuries, when Europe shifted from rural self-sufficiency to mass production and importation. The new society prioritized fast-processed, canned frozen foods, cheap imported soybeans from the United States and South America at low prices due to large-scale mechanization. Easy-to-process soybeans can be ground into flour, pressed for oil, made into milk vegetarian meat without prolonged soaking and rinsing. What about lupin? It is edible, but must be soaked, rinsed, manually processed. Yields fluctuate due to dependence on Mediterranean weather. It is difficult to fully mechanize, and its high alkaloid content makes it not easily integrated into industrial production lines. While soybeans were hybridized, selectively bred, and supported by import subsidy policies, lupin was gradually pushed to the margins, from the field to the livestock barn as animal feed. And then when later generations grew up no longer seeing it on the dining table, the memory of it also gradually faded. But the archive never closes. Lupin never truly disappeared completely. It continues to exist in places where tradition and local needs preserve it, and it is even being revived through sustainable protein strategies. In Italy, especially in the south and Sicily, lupin seeds soaked in brine are still sold in traditional markets. You can see them in glass jars, pale yellow, eaten as an appetizer. In Portugal and parts of Spain, lupin, called tremosos, is still served in local bars. A small bowl on the table next to a drink, an old habit that remains. In Greece, lupin was once much more common, but today it appears only sporadically in rural communities. Meanwhile, at the agricultural level, lupin continues to exist in a different role as a soil-improving crop in rotation, as livestock feed, as a legume grown on poor soils. Particularly in Australia, lupin species such as Lupinus angustifolius are cultivated on a large scale mainly for animal feed and industrial raw materials, not traditional food. And then in recent decades, a new shift has begun. Lupin is being revived through the EU protein strategy aimed at reducing dependence on imported soybeans. European production increased sharply from 2000 about 88,000 tons to 2020 more than 457,000 tons for lupin species, with a focus on sweet varieties, low alkaloid, to facilitate processing. Research projects are testing cultivation in France, Germany, Poland, and expanding into Eastern European countries. Lupin is now being reopened in policy discussions because of its sustainability value, domestic protein potential, and capacity to grow on poor soils. If you want to grow ancient Lupin lupinus albus first, you need to clearly identify this species to avoid confusion with common ornamental lupin varieties. This is an annual herbaceous plant growing upright in compact low bushes, 60 to 120 centimeters tall with sturdy stems, slightly covered in fine hairs, carrying the pale green to gray-green color characteristic of the Mediterranean region. Its leaves are arranged alternately, palmately compound, with 5 to 9 obovate or rhomboid leaflets with rounded or slightly pointed tips. The upper surface nearly smooth, while the underside is lightly pubescent, creating a soft texture when young and firmer when mature. The flowers grow in long, terminal racemes with the typical papilionaceous legume structure. The upper petal broad and elliptical cream, white to pale purple in color, the lateral and lower petals smaller blooming in summer attracting bees and self-pollinating effectively. The pods are transversely flattened rectangular 6 to 15 centimeters long yellow, when mature containing 3 to 7 large seeds that are rounded rectangular and flattened cream white or pale pink, approximately 7 to 16 millimeters in size. The taproot of lupin is very strong, penetrating deeper than 1 meter, notable for pink-red nodules on the roots, a sign of symbiotic Bradyrhizobium bacteria helping the plant fix nitrogen from the air. Regarding edible parts, the seed is the main and most important part, high in protein. Young leaves are mainly used as green manure or as livestock feed after drying. Stems and mature leaves are usually plowed under as green manure to improve soil. For cultivation, ancient lupin prefers temperate to subtropical climates, tolerates light cold and short frosts, requires about 110 to 150 frost-free days to mature seeds, prefers full sun at least 6 hours per day, and is drought tolerant. Ideal soil is well-drained sandy loam pH from 6.0 to 7. 0, even nutrient-poor soil is suitable because the plant fixes its own nitrogen. Because of this characteristic, for many centuries, lupin has been considered a useful rotation crop alongside cereals. You can sow seeds directly into the soil in spring after the last frost at a depth of 3 to 5 centimeters, spacing 20 to 30 centimeters between plants and 40 to 60 centimeters between rows. Seeds usually germinate after about 7 to 14 days depending on soil temperature. When the plant grows under full sun and well-drained soil, the first flower clusters usually appear about 45 to 60 days after sowing. After that, pods begin forming around 60 to 80 days, gradually turning dry and hard as the seeds inside complete development. The entire cycle from sowing to dry seed harvest usually lasts about 110 to 150 days depending on climate and variety. If the soil is planting lupin for the first time, it is advisable to apply Bradyrhizobium inoculant to initiate nitrogen fixation. Care is quite simple, moderate watering. No need for nitrogen fertilizer, because excess nitrogen will promote leaf growth, but fewer seeds. Harvest when the pods turn yellow and dry, the seeds inside completely hard and dry. Dry the seeds for storage, or use immediately. Harvest when the pods turn yellow and dry. Dry the seeds for storage, or use immediately. Today, lupin is also milled into flour to increase protein content in bread or gluten-free products. In regions such as Italy, Portugal, or Spain, debittered lupin seeds are often soaked in brine and served as a traditional appetizer. You take dry lupin seeds, sweet variety, rinse them clean. Then soak in cold water for 24 hours. Change the water several times if bitterness is detected. Then discard the water, add new water, and bring to a boil, then simmer for 1 to 2 hours until the seeds are soft and easily crushed. Let cool, rinse clean, and continue soaking in cold water until the bitterness is completely gone. Finally, soak the seeds in diluted brine. Add minced garlic, oregano leaves, or dried chili as desired. Refrigerate 1 to 2 days to absorb flavor. When eating, take them out, gently squeeze to remove the skin. If desired, chew the seed inside. This dish is salty and firm, very suitable for drinking occasions or as a snack. The entire process requires patience, but that is exactly the spirit of ancient lupin, high-value sustainable, requiring only time and initiative to turn it into a good dish on the table. Lupin was not erased from books. It was not replaced by a decree. It was simply abandoned through silence. But the seeds are still there. The knowledge is still there. And now you know. Every lupin plant you grow is a vote against the system that taught you to depend, a vote against the companies that profit from making you buy fertilizer, buy new seeds every year, buy protein supplements, soy flour, food for people with diabetes, low-carb products, a vote against forgetting. This is not just gardening. This is reclamation. You are not only growing food, you are growing independence. You are not only sowing seeds, you are sowing a declaration. For thousands of years, lupin sustained European farming families on barren fields. It fixed its own nitrogen, enriched the soil, regenerated itself without anyone's intervention. Then the system chose another path, chose convenience, chose speed, chose cheap imports from far away. And now you are here reading these lines, knowing its name, thinking about planting it. That is not accidental. That is the archive reopening. That is knowledge refusing to die. That is you becoming part of the continuation. We are bringing back what they intentionally let be forgotten, one garden at a time. If what you watch makes you think, makes you want to try growing lupin, or simply if you see value in reclaiming what was forgotten, like, share, comment, the climate zone you are in, what is that weather like for lupin? I read every comment. And if you want to learn more about neglected plants, buried knowledge ways to become more self-reliant in food and agriculture, follow Join. We are not a large network, not funded by any corporation. We are simply people reopening the archive, sharing what they do not want you to know. And that begins with you.